wa barakatuh. It's the second day of January 2025. A very good evening to you and welcome to another episode of Live Real Talk Show only on Horizon TV. My name is Zazam Ahmed. We normally bring you conversations on topics that matters to you, from security to education to business to economy, among other issues that matters to you. And today we have this topic of discussion on the challenges facing the marginalized community. We ask ourselves, who are the marginalized community in Kenya? What challenges do they face? Do they have the rights? What rights do they have in Kenya? And to discuss that one, I am joined by Sheikh Musa Mwale, who will put more insight on this topic of discussion on the challenges facing the marginalized community. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yes.
No, mashallah, glad to have you here
Thank
today.
you too, thank you.
Okay, mashallah.
Yes.
Karibu sana. So today we have this discussion on challenges facing the marginalized community.
Yes.
Before we even go deeply to these challenges, maybe give us briefly give us who are the marginalized community, or which are the marginalized communities in Kenya.
Actually, first of all, maybe we begin by Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We begin by trying to understand
Okay.
how
Who are the marginalized community?
First of all, what is marginalization?
Okay.
And then we ask ourselves, how does it occur, or why does it occur?
Okay.
Of course, now trying to understand marginalization is a process where a specific group of people, due to their uniqueness or the unique needs that they possess, is consigned to the periphery, is put aside or on the edge. They're not considered by the larger group of people. And normally the group it could be small, and in most cases there are smaller groups that are marginalized. But we also have found out that even some larger groups get marginalized because of their uniqueness. So that is briefly the understanding of marginalization. Now, yes, in Kenya we have groups that are marginalized and have been marginalized over time. And one big group, unfortunately, it's not a small group anymore, are the Muslims.
Okay.
And the Muslims are marginalized all the way. It's actually, marginalization is systemic. It's embedded in the system. It's a sort of, we call it, it's violence, but violence that is structural violence. It's embedded in the system, in the structures, in the laws of the community. And therefore, the Muslims have been marginalized over time. And just like other communities, you know, the smaller communities, like the Ogiek community, these very, very small communities have also been marginalized over time. And because of that, these groups, and one of the things that you might, for example, the Muslim community, as it is right now, the Muslim community, according to the Muslims, we claim to be almost 30% of the country's population. And 30%, you're talking of almost 15, 16 million people. But the national census or the national data and many other non-Muslims, they say the Muslims are below 10%. And they have been below 10% since 1963. Yet you know that there's been an influx of Muslims in this country from the immigrants from Somalia, from Ethiopia, from Pakistan, from, you know, we have a lot of Egyptians, we have a lot of Yemenis who are actually now citizens of this country because they've been here for a very long time, you know. You have fourth generation groups of people who've been here for the last several decades. But they remain marginalized, and one of the form of that marginalization is being told that their number is small.
Okay.
And therefore, if you keep on being told that your number is small, and therefore your voice doesn't count or your voice doesn't matter, that's one form of marginalization.
You can see, other than people coming from outside country, you also have, other than the future generations, we can see that there are some people who also revert. So the population is really increasing.
True, quite true. There are quite a lot of people who have reverted and who continue reverting to Islam. And of course, Muslims, fortunately, we marry more than one wife, and therefore our families are big. You will hardly find a Muslim family that is below, 5, 6, members. While on the other hand, you find that the non-Muslim families, you find they're having just 1 or 2 kids, on the maximum 2 kids. While Muslims, you're having more than 6, 7.
So
some people are blessed to even have 20.
No clear data on the population of the religion or the Muslim community.
There is a deliberate to suppress the number of Muslims in this country. And when the government denies, when people deny that Muslims are not marginalized, it just starts there. You ask anyone, you go to government data, but go to the ground and count. Just in Nairobi alone, I could say roughly Muslims are maybe 1 million. So how can Nairobi alone have 1 million Muslims and the entire Kenya have less than 4 million or so Muslims? Because they say we are less than 10%.
Okay.
So if our population is 50 million, we are being told that we are maybe about 4 million or 4.5 because we are less than 10%.
So they deliberate, don't give the data.
Yes, so other communities, of course, like the people with disabilities.
Okay.
Disabilities vary, from albinism to, mental challenges, to physical challenges, to, many facets of disability. And then, women also, to some extent, really get marginalized. They get marginalized by the larger community, but also within specific groups of or ethnic groups. In some communities, women cannot. They have no voice. They have no right on inheriting anything or possessing any form of property, or even where men are talking, they cannot talk. So, groups like that. So there are quite a number of groups that experience marginalization in this country. Yes.
So, according to how you're answering this question, I think leading me to another question, which I feel like you've answered, though not that imetokea vizuri, unaona?
Yes.
So, for example, when you talk about the characterize, what really characterize them? And I've seen that you've mentioned the Muslim. That means religion. You've talked religion. About women. That means it's gender.
Yes.
And other things.
Yeah.
The race, the
disabilities, and I mean other forms of unique qualities. People who suffer from specific illnesses, maybe people with HIV and AIDS. They also face some form of marginalization, or people who suffer from life-threatening diseases. Quite a number of things emerge that make people experience marginalization. Yes.
Okay. Maybe what are these challenges they face?
First of all, exclusion. They are excluded in the mainstream activities and the development of the country or the nation or a community. And when they're excluded, they miss out on opportunities to enhance themselves, to realize their potential. They could miss out on education opportunities, for example. If you go to Muslim majority areas, until a few years ago, you would not find national schools there. All national schools were concentrated in very specific areas, and they were far. And therefore, for a Muslim to be lucky to join a national school, they had to, first of all, really compete to, when the environment, the education environment was not very suitable. They don't have good schools, they don't have teachers, but then they have to compete with people, with other students or learners with good facilities, and then qualify to go to a national school. Those early days. And the national school used to be very far. And most of these national schools, unfortunately, had been taken over by missionaries. And therefore, they became church-sponsored. And the values espoused in those schools are not values that were good for the Muslim students, for Muslim learners. So all the way, you see, they create systems, they put in place systems, even up to now. There are quite a number of schools that Muslims are not allowed to practice their religion. They cannot have a prayer room. They have to go to church on Saturday, on Sunday, you see. They have to partake in religious practices that are not their own practices. And therefore, they get limited. A parent would not want their child to go through that. Therefore, they either opt not to take those opportunities. Quite a number of students get admitted in national schools, you know, very good national schools, you know, but they don't join because parents fear compromising the values of their children. So these are some of the, what we call the systemic marginalization. People will tell you, no, people are not discriminated against. But when you have rules and laws that discriminate against you, that exclude you, therefore, you're being marginalized in one way or another.
Systemic, you know, a school, and not just one school, but I've had several girls' schools complaining over the school not allowing them to wear hijab. They took it to the court. If I could ask, maybe the marginalization started somewhere, right? Could we say that the Kenya's history has impacted the marginalized communities today? How?
Yes, historically, it started with the colonialists. When they wanted to rule this country, they had to put in place, they had to use that tactic we famously refer to as divide and rule. And therefore, they had to categorize people. And they had to make others look better than the others. Others were given more access to more opportunities than others. And therefore, for example, in Kenya and in the larger East Africa region, when the missionaries came, though they were welcomed by Muslims, because Islam was here first, they later on created systems that excluded Muslims to participate, especially in education. And people had to change their names to be able to pursue education. And the famous, the late president of Uganda, who was called Joseph, he was called Yusuf Lule, but he had to change his name to Joseph to be able to go to school. You see, and that is just one example, but there are many, many examples. So you ask, why didn't Muslims, those early days, go to school? Because their parents feared that if they took their kids to missionary schools, they're going to compromise their Islamic values. And they opted to withdraw their kids and maybe just take them to the madrasa and all that. And it has continued. Although nowadays, of course, school is open for everyone, but when you tell me that girls are being denied to wear hijab, what is that telling you? It's saying that this child is being excluded in participating in gaining education. And therefore, if you don't participate in gaining education, where does that leave you? When your colleagues become doctors and engineers and nurses and teachers, you did not get that education to qualify you to be one among those professions.
Talking about exclusion.
Yes.
And especially if we talk about the Kenya's history and how the education system affected the life of the Muslim community. Talking about exclusion right now, how, in what ways do this marginalized community experience exclusion in political processes and maybe decision making?
When they are not given a level playing field to participate like others, and in this case we can even talk about women. When women want to participate in the mainstream political process, of course the community will start giving them names, branding them names like either they're big-headed, they have loose morals and all that, you know. And the competition in politics is so tight.
Okay.
And people do a lot of, you know, nasty things that women are not naturally, by their nature, they are not able to do. And therefore, there's no level playing field for the women or the youth, for example. When you talk about politics being monetized, you know, you need a lot of money to be able to even get an MCA seat. Where are the youth going to get that money? You know, they just left school and now they have to compete, and they have to cough out millions of shillings to be able to compete. Where does that leave women? Where does that leave people with disabilities? Where does it leave people who do not have a financial muscle? You know, people who are good, people with integrity, but they do not have financial muscle. And therefore you end up having leadership or leaders who by virtue have either been corrupt, they acquired their wealth through corrupt means, or they are simply arrogant because they were blessed with resources somehow. So they feel it's my resources that brought me here. Okay. Yes. So that's one of the things. So when it comes to, of course, Muslims, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. If you are not given a level playing field, for example, if you come, it's only on very rare occasion, and especially I saw it in Western Kenya and maybe in Nyanza, where you find a Muslim becoming a leader of the community, like, I mean, a political leader, like an MP in a Christian majority area. Okay. Other than that, you cannot find that in many areas.
Yeah.
You can't. So the fact that you're a Muslim, you are treated as a foreigner. Okay. You know, and when for example, if we go back to our villages, the minute you identified as a Muslim, you are labeled as Swahili. It doesn't matter whether you are a Luo, a Luya, I mean a Kalenjin, you are labeled as Swahili. And therefore, immediately, you are labeled as Swahili, become a foreigner. It doesn't matter, you are born and bred. Yes, you are already a foreigner, you see. So, and this is what contributes to marginalization. So you cannot compete for space, even in your own area that you are born and bred, because of that label. Yes. Okay.
If I look at time, I think it's time for us to take a short break. But before we even take this short break, just clarify something for me. Are youths classified as a marginalized community?
We can say, in a way, youths have been marginalized because when they are not given the level playing field, when they are being told that you are leaders of tomorrow, and they've been told that throughout, that they are leaders of tomorrow, and yet they are not prepared, they are not nurtured, they are not mentored to be that leader of tomorrow. The only way they participate in leadership is by being merchants for hire, you know, by being goons, by being used to cause violence, but not being mentored into leadership. Okay. You know, I can tell you for sure that I have not seen many leaders in Kenya mentor young people to be leaders. You know, they don't, because they fear if you mentor someone, they'll take over you. So what they do is that they want to just continue using them. They get surrounded by these young people.
Okay.
They give them handouts, and the young people feel good. But when now it comes to participating in the mainstream political competition, the young people, they don't have the muscle to do that.
That's quite interesting.
Yes.
I know time is really moving fast, but let's take a short break. This is the end of our first part of the show, the live Real Talk. We will be back with more.
HorizonTV, the beacon for the nation.
Are you looking to stay informed about the amazing stories within the Muslim community? Do you want to hear inspiring stories and insightful discussions about faith, culture, and current events? Tune in to the Muslim Insight, your weekly news updates where we tell you stories that matter to you. The Muslim Insight, informing, inspiring, every Friday from 8 a.m. with me, Zazam Ahmed.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
Enyi mlioamini, munapoitwa kuhudhuria swala ya Ijumaa, fanyeni haraka kuikimbilia, muache biashara zenu, hilo ni bora ikiwa mwelewa.
Isikilizeni kwa umakinifu khutba ya Ijumaa
ili uzidi kujenga imani yako na kupata faida nyingi ya siku hii.
Coming to you every Friday from Jamia Mosque, Nairobi.
Live on HorizonTV.
Quote of the day. Imam Malik bin Anas said, I am but a man. I make mistakes sometimes, and I am correct sometimes. So examine my opinions and accept anything that agrees with the book and sunnah, and leave anything that does not agree with the book and sunnah.
HorizonTV, the beacon for the nation.
Welcome back for the second segment of the live Real Talk show. I am your host Zazam Ahmed. We were having this discussion on the challenges facing the marginalized communities, and our last issue we tackled, or rather what we were discussing, the last thing was, is youth or are youth part of the marginalized community? And we got it clear that they are marginalized. And something else I want us to talk about, because this is a topic that really matters to us, marginalized community, and most people are really marginalized, and most community are really marginalized in different ways, in terms of religion, in terms of race, in terms of gender, among other things. So what social economic challenges do the marginalized community face?
is the fact that they have been marginalized and therefore they were not able to get certain opportunities. For example, a good education or sound education. Then they are marginalized in the mainstream gainful employment industry. They're marginalized in the not just gainful employment as being employed, but also creative industry, you know, the juakali sector, where you can do your own things, because you did not get access to skills, you know, be it carpentry, be it masonry or whatever, and therefore you cannot be able to even start something on your own. So that's one. But two, it also limits you in many other opportunities. As we said, when you talk about politics, politics needs resources for you to be able to mobilize, for you to be able to move from one point to another to sell your policies and your manifesto. And therefore, if you're not able to get good education or sound education, you've been marginalized from the word go, or you've been actually you've been prepared to fail.
Okay.
So that's one thing. The other thing is when it comes to, for example, healthcare. Within marginalized communities, you might not have good health facilities, adequate health facilities, and therefore quite a number of these people are affected because they did, either when they were kids, they did not get the rightful immunization that they required, and therefore maybe some of them developed certain ailments like polio or whatever, you know, or maybe, you know, people like when you go down maybe at the coast, when you go to Wajir, there are a lot of snakes. So if you're bitten by a snake and the next health facility is 60 kilometers, 70 kilometers away where you cannot even, there is no means of transport. By the time you reach there, maybe your leg has to be amputated. So where does that leave you? It leaves you with a disability that would have otherwise been averted had there been good health facilities and accessible health facility. So these are things that in future impact on your life. It's like, you know, planting a seed of poverty. So when you deny people certain opportunities, especially education opportunities, you're actually preparing them to be very poor. It doesn't mean, of course, that people without education cannot make money. But what we are saying is that education opens up doors, because either you're getting education to be able to compete, or you're getting skills to be able to do something for yourself. So if you're denied all that, where does that leave you? If you are denied access to good health, and you get into some accident, you get amputated, you know, you get a disability, where is that leaving you? You know, it's limiting your potential to meaningfully participate in socioeconomic development of a country. And where, of course, like certain communities like the Ogiek community, there are quite a number of communities, gatherers, hunters and gatherers who live in a bony forest, who live in, you know, some of these mountains. Some of these communities, they've been marginalized, that they do not have, since independence up to date, they do not have maybe a single senior civil servant. You know, Alhamdulillah, we were lucky. Unfortunately, we lost one of our best brains, Honorable, the late Kadhi of Nakuru, Honorable Tito, from the Turkana community. Coming from the Turkana community, rising to the level of being a Kadhi in the country. That is, for us, that's an achievement as a community, because as Muslims, we do not discriminate, you know. As long as someone has shahada, he's a brother or a sister in Islam. But you can see that some of those communities, apart from the county government or the devolution, they were really marginalized. You would not hear some of them in the mainstream political circle or mainstream civil service.
Okay.
You know, and if you hear them, they would be consigned to certain cadre of civil servants like drivers, you know, or security or something like that. You didn't see them rise to the level of permanent secretaries and ministers and all that. So that's what we're saying, that some of these communities, historically, they have been marginalized all the way from the colonial era up to successive governments. There are specific big communities that have enjoyed the fruits of this country to the detriment of other many communities. We say we are about 45 or 48 ethnic groups in Kenya. Of course, they keep on adding. But you only hear of less than 6 in the mainstream employment, you know. You don't hear of those small communities are having one of their own, you know, in influential positions in this country. Yes.
You've mentioned the lack of quality education, denial, access to health and infrastructure. What about, because we've had so many cases, still cases are there on the citizenship and identity and maybe land ownership. How does this
true
impact?
Like the Nubian.
Okay.
They have been struggling all through
To get
ID
cards.
to get citizenship or to get ID cards.
Yeah.
They are still taken in as foreigners.
Okay.
You have quite a number of people, even down at the coast, who just recently, either a year or 2 years ago, they were recognized. Yet, you have people coming from, unfortunately, people coming from specific big countries that get citizenship within a few years. You know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they have citizenship of this country, and they're participating in mainstream politics of this country. They're getting leadership. Yet you have people whose great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents came here from specific countries. They have been lived here. They do not have citizenship.
We have people who are Kenyan through different ways. We have those who are citizen by birth.
Yes.
Others, we have like 3, right?
Of course, you have naturalization, you have by birth, you have by registration, you know. You come in and you marry and you stay for a certain number of years, normally it's said 7 years, and then you qualify to apply for citizenship. But we have people who've been here less than 5 years, and they have had the citizenship, and they have even participated in politics. Yes. And yet you have people whose great-great-grandparents came here from Zambia, from Malawi, from South Africa. They have never gotten citizenship.
Okay. They're
still treated as foreigners. And you see now, they do not know, they just hear that our great-grandfather or mother came from a certain area. You know, they have no link, they don't know any relation about that area. The only home they know is Kenya. But yet in Kenya, they're still treated as foreigners. So where does that leave them?
Okay, and is the government of Kenya really doing something, or rather addressing these issues or these challenges being faced by marginalized communities?
To some extent, yes. But of course, it's for purposes of political expediency. It's when, you know, during those politics, election is when you see certain categories of people now being recognized. You know, after, you know, 30 years, 40 years, they're now being recognized as citizens, they're being given citizenship. It's just for political mileage. It's not for purposes of addressing the challenges these people face. And also just maybe even compensating them for the loss they have, especially the children, for the loss they have gone through. You know, when you don't have an ID card, you cannot get employed.
Yeah.
You know, right now, if you don't have a birth certificate, you cannot go to school because they need birth documents to register you in school.
Yeah.
So you find that some of these people really have suffered. Yes.
Okay. Maybe how do marginalized communities navigate the tension between preserving their cultural practices and traditions while also facing pressures to conform the dominant societal norms and expectations?
Well, I don't think they need to really, they don't need to conform. They only need to espouse the national values. They don't need to conform to any societal needs. Yeah. And they don't need to compromise their own values.
Okay.
Of course, there are certain things that you cannot, for example, issues to do with FGM. You cannot say that you want now every other person to appreciate it, because it's a cultural thing.
Okay, yeah.
And if it's proved that it's detrimental to the health of those people who undergo through it, then it's something that has to be looked into and maybe gotten rid of. So you cannot say, I will uphold this, yet it is detrimental to even yourself. Or you cannot say, for example, right now, in my community, we don't take kids to school, and therefore I will not take my children to school. You know, no. That's why I'm saying you have to espouse the national values. What does the national value say about the rights of individuals, the right to health, the right to be protected against retrogressive cultural practices? Okay. You know, those words. But any other thing like your language, other practices that are not detrimental, that are not retrogressive, it's okay.
Okay.
But also they have to be able to boldly say that this is who we are, and we would appreciate if you recognize us with our uniqueness, you know, and we will also espouse what is national to all of us, what is common to all of us. You know, so you cannot just say, I will stay in my practices, be like this, and I need to be recognized. No, you know, you cannot go to the government office half naked just because your community, you don't put on clothes.
Yes, okay.
You know, you cannot go there with a sword in the government office because in your communities you carry swords.
Okay.
There are certain expectations, you know. Yes.
And do legal protections exist for these communities?
Yes, yes, of course the Constitution is there.
How effective?
The Constitution guarantees as all of us the equal rights, you know, under the Bill of Rights. We are also guaranteed the protection, protection to life, access to basic needs like education, like housing. So they are there. Whether they are implemented, it's another issue altogether. I think people should actively practice constitutionalism. Where you think your right has been violated, like right now, you go to court. You know, like for the Muslims, we've been going to court. Where we think the rights of our girls are being violated, we go to court. Okay. And if we come up with a good case, we will win.
That is an action taken by the people, the community.
Yes.
But this protection, legal protections, like you said, they exist.
It's because it's
there. Are they effective? Okay, they are there.
Yes, it's because it's there. It's only us to actually ask for it. Of course, we're not supposed to ask. We're supposed to, it's an entitlement. It should be there. But where it's not given, where it's denied, you have to go for it. Okay. Yes. And there are legal means through which you can pursue that.
Okay. And generally, what can be done in order to make sure that the marginalized communities have equal opportunities?
I think one of the things is to appreciate that we did not choose to be here.
Okay.
That God in his blessings so as fit for us to be here. You know, and therefore we have to appreciate that we will be with people who do not espouse the same cultural beliefs like us, who do not espouse the same religious beliefs like us. And we just have to appreciate that and appreciate that diversity and know how to live with them, accommodate them and live with them. But when we think that we are the only ones who deserve to be in this space, then what we are doing is marginalizing others because of their uniqueness, you know, because of their things that that do not conform to our own, you know. So we should be able to appreciate diversity and help anyone who is marginalized, who is discriminated against, to be able to get their right. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. And if you could at least put emphasis on the youths.
Yeah, as for the youth, of course, we should stop saying that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow and start mentoring them to be leaders. And not just leaders of tomorrow, but leaders of today. But also for the youth, I know they have a lot of resilience, they have a lot of energy, but they also have to appreciate that leadership is a journey, that you do not wake up today and you are given a mantle of leadership. That it's a responsibility. At one time I was traveling in some rural area and I saw a young man in the morning and this young person was very drunk. So I asked myself, honestly, if this person is going to be a leader, what kind of leader are they going to be? Because they're very young and they're so drunk and it's in the morning. So youth also have to start being responsible and also fight for space and fight to be mentored, not to be given leadership, not to be rewarded, but to be mentored so that they become better leaders than the leaders we have today.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sheikh Musa Mwale. I think the message is home and dry. Thank you so much for coming here, putting more insight on the challenges being faced by marginalized community. I think that's it for the show, or rather for the time. Let's meet tomorrow for the Muslim Insight, inshallah. I have been your host, Zazam Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا.
Enter his father Azar on the day of judgment, whose face will be dark and covered with dust. Ibrahim will say to him, Alam aqul laka la ta'sini. Did I not tell you, my father, to not disobey me? And his father will say to him, today I will not disobey you. Ibrahim will then call upon Allah and he will say, my Lord, you promised me to not disgrace me on this day of resurrection.